Breaking tonight, a young college student has been found in Reno. She disappeared from a friend's home just days ago. Investigators say DNA links her case to other events still under investigation. Volunteers search through snow. Voices crack with worry. A mother pleads for answers. A city waits, holding its breath. A young student never returned. The questions grow louder. Then, silence. Cut to black. This is one of those cases that changed an entire community. A winter weekend in Reno. Quiet streets. Ordinary routines. Then something happened. And nothing felt ordinary again. Neighbors began searching. Strangers became a support system. Investigators followed every lead. Piece by piece. Step by step. Tonight we retrace that journey. Carefully. Respectfully. What happened that weekend? How did the clues connect? Why did this case linger long after the headlines faded? This is the story of a city waiting for answers. Reno moves at its own pace. Bright lights beside quiet neighborhoods. The Truckee River cutting through downtown. Mountains watch over the city. Snow settles across familiar streets. Winter feels calm. Predictable. Students come and go each semester. Life around the university feels energetic. Coffee shops, late classes, weekend plans. For many it feels safe. A place where routines repeat. Where friends know each other well. Brianna had returned home for winter break. A pause from college life in California. Time with family felt comforting. Familiar. She made plans like anyone her age. Snowboarding during the day. Concerts and friends at night. Laughter-filled long weekends. Photos, messages, inside jokes. Nothing seemed unusual. Her schedule felt ordinary. Laundry at her mother's house. Movies together before heading out again. Friends gathered without worry. Doors opened and closed freely. People came and went often. It was the kind of weekend that blends into memory later. No one sensed danger nearby. No one imagined watching the clock. The city felt secure. The future felt wide open. And that's what makes this story so difficult to understand. Because before everything changed, life looked completely normal. To the people who loved her, she wasn't a headline. She was a daughter. A friend people counted on. After her father passed away, her bond with her mother grew stronger. They leaned on each other. A small family, tightly connected. Friends say she was thoughtful. The kind who noticed small things. She remembered birthdays without reminders. A call. A message. Every year. She studied psychology in college. She wanted to help children someday. Not for attention. Because she genuinely cared. Photos show an easy smile. Moments filled with laughter. Her friends describe comfort around her. Someone easy to trust. One friend remembered her kindness. How she made everyone feel included. Another said she felt safe. Just being near her. She stayed close with her mother. Sharing stories, photos, everyday updates. Even small moments mattered. A quick check-in before bed. She was building a future. Classes, friendships, new experiences. Nothing about her life felt reckless. Nothing suggested something was wrong. To her family she was steady. To friends she was lighthearted and warm. And in those ordinary days, no one imagined the coming silence. Because to everyone around her, she was deeply loved and deeply missed. Saturday evening felt ordinary. A movie with her mother. Laundry folded, plans still open. At 9 p.m., they hugged goodbye. One last conversation before the night began. She headed out with friends. Music, laughter, crowded spaces. Nothing seemed out of place. Hours passed quietly. The city moved into early morning. Around 3:30 a.m., she returned to the house. Friends settled in for sleep. She chose the couch instead. Near glass doors left unlocked. A house where people came and went. At 4:23 a.m., a final text was sent. Routine. Casual. Nothing alarming. Then the house went silent. Morning arrived slowly. Friends woke and made breakfast. The couch was empty. At first, no panic. Maybe she moved upstairs. Maybe she stepped out briefly. They checked the rooms. called her name, waited. Silence answered back. Her phone was still there. Her shoes beside the couch. Purse untouched. Clothes nearby. Everything suggested she never left. Confusion turned to fear. Why would she go anywhere? Without her belongings? Then someone noticed the pillow. Small stains. Something unusual. The mood shifted instantly. Conversation became whispers. A call was made. Family rushed over. Authorities were contacted. The energy in the house changed. Normal explanations disappeared. Outside, winter held the city still. Inside, time seemed to slow. By mid-morning, one question remained. If she hadn't walked away, where had she gone? The call came early. Detectives were asked to respond immediately. Something about the situation felt urgent. A young woman had vanished overnight. Her belongings were still inside the house. And questions were multiplying quickly. Officers secured the property. Neighbors watched from the street. The mood shifted across Reno overnight. Investigators began documenting everything. Every room, every doorway, every detail. Nothing was considered too small. Search teams formed within hours. Volunteers walked through freezing snow. They searched parks, fields, and riverbanks. K-9 units moved methodically. Helicopters scanned from above. Hope guided every step forward. At daily briefings, officials spoke carefully. They urged calm but acknowledged concern. Time, they said, mattered now. Family members appeared on camera. Their voices steady but emotional. They asked for information, not sympathy. As the investigation expanded, forensic testing began behind the scenes. Specialists collected samples for analysis. One clue quickly stood out. An unknown DNA profile appeared. It suggested another person had been present. But progress slowed unexpectedly. Local labs were overwhelmed. Thousands of samples were waiting in line. The backlog became a major obstacle. Each test required careful comparison. Nothing could be rushed safely. This delay frustrated investigators. And it frustrated the community even more. Residents wanted answers now. Instead, they faced waiting. So the community took action. Fundraisers appeared across the city. People donated whatever they could. Blue ribbons began appearing everywhere. On cars. On signs. On windows. A symbol of hope and unity. Electronic billboards displayed her photo. Search updates aired daily. The case grew impossible to ignore. National media soon arrived. News crews lined local streets. The story reached viewers across America. The investigation had become larger than one city could handle alone. The FBI joined the effort. Additional resources were deployed. Analysts reviewed timelines and evidence. Investigators compared similar incidents nearby. Patterns began to emerge slowly. Questions turned toward connections. To understand this moment, it helps to understand DNA matching. Every person carries unique genetic markers. Investigators compare these markers carefully. A full match can identify an individual. But finding that match takes time. Samples must be processed step by step. Then compared against databases nationwide. If no match exists, investigators search for related profiles. This can narrow possibilities significantly. But when labs face backlogs, results can take weeks or longer. And in active investigations, those delays can change everything. The faster results arrive, the faster investigators can act. That's why timing matters so much. Back in Reno, frustration built. Searchers continued despite the cold. Candles appeared at gathering sites. People who never met her felt personally connected to the case. Parents imagined their own children. Each briefing brought new questions. Was this random? Planned? Opportunistic? Investigators stayed cautious publicly. Privately, concern deepened. Evidence suggested deliberate behavior. This was not impulsive chaos. Detectives began reviewing older reports. Incidents near the university surfaced. Patterns of movement. Similar timing. Suddenly the case widened. It wasn't just about one night anymore. It might involve previous events. The city felt the shift. Fear mixed with determination. People locked doors earlier. Students traveled in groups. Campus safety reminders increased. Conversations changed tone everywhere. Meanwhile, family interviews continued. Her mother spoke with quiet strength. She pleaded for cooperation and awareness. She thanked volunteers repeatedly. She believed answers would come. Hope remained part of the message. As forensic results slowly returned, investigators updated their strategy. Teams shared information across agencies. Every tip was reviewed. Thousands poured in from viewers nationwide. Most led nowhere, but each one had to be checked, because one small detail could change the entire direction. Days turned into weeks. The search never fully stopped. Neither did the attention. Reporters asked difficult questions. Could the investigation be moving faster? Were crucial clues being missed? Officials reassured the public. They emphasized precision over speed. They said the process mattered. Behind closed doors, investigators worked around the clock. Wall charts grew more complex. Names were added. Locations connected. Timelines adjusted. The picture slowly sharpened. The city waited together, watching, hoping, holding breath. And as evidence accumulated, one idea became harder to ignore. This might not be isolated. The same unknown person could be linked to multiple incidents. If true, the urgency changed again. Investigators weren't just solving a mystery. They were trying to prevent the next one. By the end of this phase, the investigation had transformed from a local missing person case into a nationwide story. Resources expanded, pressure increased, and somewhere within the evidence, answers were beginning to surface. But the identity behind the DNA remained hidden, for now. And that uncertainty kept the entire community awake. As weeks passed, investigators widened their focus. They revisited earlier reports near campus. Small details began to align. News clips replayed unfamiliar events. Incidents once seen as separate were now viewed side by side. A pattern slowly emerged. Similar timing, similar locations, similar descriptions from witnesses. The same unknown DNA appeared again. Not once, but multiple times. Each result tightened the connection. The map told its own story. Events clustered within a few blocks. The distance between them was small. Too small to ignore. Students began changing routines. Walking in groups after dark. Checking locks twice before sleeping. Interviews reflected growing concern. Parents called from out of town. Fear spread quietly but quickly. Investigators released a sketch. An ordinary-looking face. Nothing obviously threatening. That detail unsettled people most. Whoever this person was, he blended into everyday life. Detectives built a behavioral profile. Someone patient, calculated, observant, someone familiar with the area. The incidents suggested planning. Approach, timing, and movement repeated. This wasn't random opportunity. Officers studied movement patterns. Entry points, escape routes. Neighborhood familiarity stood out clearly. They believed the person watched carefully, waiting for moments of vulnerability, then disappearing without notice. Public briefings became more urgent. Officials asked for awareness, not panic. But the message was clear. The danger might still be nearby. Community meetings grew crowded. People asked whether they were safe. Detectives could not promise certainty. Meanwhile, forensic analysts kept comparing evidence. Every new sample reinforced the link. The same unknown profile remained central. Investigators realized something unsettling. The behavior was escalating over time. And that raised difficult questions. If the person wasn't identified soon, would there be more incidents? Psychologists consulted on the case. They described someone seeking control. Someone confident enough to repeat patterns. This insight changed strategy. Investigators focused on routine offenders. People familiar with campus activity. They reviewed employment records. Prior complaints. Known behavioral issues. Nothing definitive appeared yet. The city waited through uncertainty. Headlines kept the story alive. Residents watched for anything unusual. Every tip mattered now. Most turned into dead ends. Still, detectives kept listening. The unknown figure remained invisible. No name. No confirmed identity. Only fragments and patterns. Yet the evidence kept pointing inward. Toward someone local. Someone nearby. By now, investigators were convinced. This was not an isolated event. And it was never random. The pressure intensified behind the scenes. Resources expanded again. Surveillance plans quietly developed. Then came one tip. That changed everything. The tip arrived quietly. Not from a detective, but from someone paying attention. A woman described something unusual. Items in a truck she couldn't explain. Details that felt out of place. At first, it seemed minor. But investigators listened carefully. Patterns mattered more than certainty. Detectives reviewed the information. Timelines began to overlap. Locations started to connect. News coverage intensified again. Safety concerns returned to headlines. Residents wondered what they had missed. Interviews revealed warning signs. Unpredictable behavior. Sudden moves. Stories that didn't quite add up. Investigators looked for consistency. Was this person connected to the unknown DNA profile? Surveillance efforts quietly expanded. Vehicles were monitored discreetly. Movements were documented closely. What stood out most was behavioral repetition. Actions suggesting confidence over time. Experts described possible red flags. Control-focused behavior. Social isolation. A tendency to test boundaries. None of these alone meant guilt. But together, they formed context. Investigators knew they needed science. And that meant DNA again. When a direct match isn't found, investigators may use familial DNA. This process looks for relatives, not the exact individual. Shared genetic markers reveal connections. A partial match can suggest a close family relationship, parent, child, or sibling. From there, investigators narrow possibilities, using age, location, and timelines. It's careful, methodical work. Familial DNA doesn't prove guilt. It simply points investigators toward a smaller pool of people. This method has solved cases once thought impossible to close. In this investigation, familial DNA became a turning point. A relative's sample offered direction. Suddenly, the unknown profile wasn't entirely anonymous anymore. A clearer path began forming. This also revealed system challenges. Earlier arrests had occurred before, but no DNA had been collected. At the time, laws were different. Collection wasn't always required. Potential links remained undiscovered. Investigators weren't assigning blame. They were confronting limitations built into older systems. Lab delays, policy gaps, and incomplete databases can slow crucial discoveries. Detectives spoke openly about pressure. They felt the community watching. They felt the weight of responsibility. Every decision mattered now. Every hour felt significant. Surveillance footage continued rolling. Investigators waited for confirmation. Science had narrowed the field. The psychological picture sharpened. Someone comfortable hiding in plain sight. Someone familiar with routines. The case was no longer drifting. It was moving toward clarity. And as evidence aligned, investigators prepared for the next step. Because soon, the unknown profile would finally have a name. After months of uncertainty, the investigation reached a turning point. Officials announced an arrest. The name came late in the process. James Biela was identified publicly. For many watching, the announcement felt heavy. Not relief exactly. More like confirmation. Investigators outlined the evidence carefully. DNA links connected multiple events. Timelines aligned with witness accounts. Location patterns supported the findings. What once felt disconnected now formed a clear trail. Court proceedings began quietly. Cameras gathered outside. Families walked past reporters silently. Inside, the focus stayed on facts. Evidence was presented step by step. Forensic experts explained their conclusions. Survivors' voices were central. Their experiences were heard respectfully. Their courage shaped the room's tone. Officials emphasized process over emotion. This was about accountability, about understanding what happened fully. The defense questioned details. The prosecution argued consistency. The jury listened for weeks. As the trial progressed, the community watched closely. Questions that lingered for years were finally addressed in public. When deliberations began, everyone waited quietly. Hours felt longer than they were. Then the verdict arrived. The jury reached a decision. Responsibility had been established. There was no celebration, only deep, quiet relief. Some family members cried softly. Others simply exhaled. Officials spoke afterward. They thanked investigators and jurors. They acknowledged the survivors, who chose to share their stories. For Brianna's family, the outcome did not erase pain, but it offered structure, a sense that the process mattered. The legal system had spoken. The evidence had been heard, and the community could finally begin moving toward healing. Survivors reminded everyone watching that recovery doesn't end in court. It continues long after headlines fade. Accountability, they said, is only one part of closure. As the courthouse lights dimmed, the city reflected quietly. This chapter was ending, but the impact would continue, shaping conversations about safety, awareness, and responsibility for years ahead. The trial ended, but healing did not begin overnight. Across Reno, memorials appeared quietly. Candles flickered through winter evenings. Flowers gathered along sidewalks. People who never met Brianna still felt connected to her story. Neighbors spoke softly at vigils. Strangers stood together in silence. The city slowly adjusted. Conversations about safety grew louder. Families changed routines. Communities looked out for one another. Her mother chose action over silence. She pushed for lasting change. That effort became known as Brianna's Law. The law expanded DNA collection policies. Samples could be gathered earlier, after serious arrests were made. Supporters believed this change could help future investigations move faster, not just for one case, but for many still unresolved. Legislators spoke about prevention. Advocates spoke about awareness. The goal was simple: learn from what happened. For the family, time moved differently. Public attention faded gradually. Private grief remained constant. Years later, another heartbreak followed. Her cousin, Brianna Denison, disappeared under troubling circumstances. The questions returned again. The uncertainty reopened old wounds. For loved ones, the past never fully stays in the past. Each new headline carries weight. Yet the community's memory endured. People continued calling Brianna everyone's daughter. That phrase captured something real, a sense that one life had touched thousands of others. The story became more than loss. It became a reminder of how communities respond together. Healing in Reno looked like small acts, a ribbon tied to a fence, a candle relit each year, a promise not to forget. Because while the events ended long ago, their shadow still shapes conversations today. And in that shared memory, her presence remains quietly alive. As the sun sets over Reno, the story becomes less about fear and more about remembrance. Photos show a young woman smiling, surrounded by people who loved her. A mother's words echo softly: gratitude, strength, and hope. Her legacy lives in awareness, in communities that watch out for one another more carefully. It reminds us to trust instincts, to notice small changes, and to speak up when something feels wrong. Ordinary evenings can change everything, and sometimes awareness today can protect someone else tomorrow. If this case held your attention, subscribe to Iman Crime Files for more documented investigations. New cases are uploaded regularly. Most crimes don't begin with violence. They begin with silence.